This is
Make It Plain.
Make It Plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make It Plain.
Get woke.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, it's the most wonderful time of the week. It's time for DailyKos with the founder of both DailyKos and Civiqs with a Q. Markos Moulitsas joins us once again. Hey, buddy, how are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm actually going to pitch my newest project. I'm now a podcaster. I'm 5 years too late, but but here I am. I actually have a podcast. It's called DailyKos' The Brief, and it's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the usual places, as well as YouTube, Facebook Live.
Congratulations. And so
Thanks.
that is the same as the YouTube show, right?
It is. It is. Except that the YouTube show has all the warts and pauses and ums. And for the podcast, we run it through a service where they actually take out all the ums and pauses and clean it up and make it sound crystal clear. So it takes a day later. So the YouTube show's on Tuesday, and then Wednesday afternoon, the podcast goes live.
Well, congratulations and welcome
Thank you.
to the podcast world. Come on in. The water's fine. So that seems to be where everything is going, what everyone is doing these days. We have an increased domestic terror threat level. What are your thoughts about that? Is this any surprise? I mean, probably should have had one before January 6th, but we have one now.
Yeah, I mean, surprise. Of course, we're not surprised. We saw this. And if you remember back during it was around the first few weeks of the Obama administration in 2009, when the Department of Homeland Security released a report on the increasing threat of right-wing domestic terrorism, and Republicans lost their mind, right? If you remember.
Right.
And the report talked about how these extremists were infiltrating the military and law enforcement, and Republicans were like, how dare you malign our armed forces? It's that same nonsense BS. And so every time you look at any of these incidences of violence and domestic terrorism, it always goes back to Republicans. Always. They've enabled it. They've encouraged it. At very best, they turned their eyes and looked the other way, because it was in their interest to foment this kind of strife and chaos. And to this very day, they're still dragging their heels on this. You still see Republicans really, really unenthusiastic about holding Donald Trump accountable for activating these terrorists. And so I think this is going to be a long-term issue. So I really hope that the Biden Justice Department just goes hard. Just ignore Republicans. They're the fringe. At this point, I don't even think they have a valid stake in our political discussion, absent the very, very few of them. And just do what you need to do to root out these militants from any position of authority, any position of power, anywhere where they might have a security clearance. Just root them all out and prosecute and handle them like they should have been handled decades, Timothy McVeigh era, right? When they tried to assassinate Gabby Giffords. I mean, this stuff is not new, and people didn't take it seriously, and now there's no choice but to take it seriously.
Or handle them like they should have been handled in the Civil War. When, it was like, well, we don't want to hurt anybody. We want everybody to heal. Kumbaya. We can't do kumbaya. Honestly, it's one of the reasons why some people felt that Joe Biden should have picked Doug Jones instead of Merrick Garland.
There's so many reasons.
Right. A lot of reasons. But I mean, and we got to get past this notion that, well, we can't go after the past. We have to move forward. No. This has got to be in the root and branch. And then what is most disturbing is now we learn the very leader of the Proud Boys, Markos, is a police informant himself. Whoa. Come on now. So still, like you said, it goes back to Republicans, but it still goes back to law enforcement. You know, not only in terms of Black Lives Matter, but then you got people, you have the very people, some of them who in law enforcement and military, who's supposed to be protecting us, on the other side trying to harm us through domestic terrorism. So there's something in these cultures that is very much awry.
We're also waiting to hear how law enforcement was complicit on the attacks on the Capitol. Clearly, at this point, officers were sent home early.
Yeah.
Before, what was it, the Washington Post yesterday, the New York Times, talking about how one officer said, I guess they have intelligence that says that there's not going to be any issue, right?
Yeah.
This officer he brought his kid to spend the night. He thought it was going to be a long night. And then he got sent home early. So decisions were made clearly. There was complicity, and this has to be rooted out. But I will say, Mark, there's one really big ray of hope this week. And, we're waking up these days to good news. Like it's, after 4 years of waking up to like what atrocity has Trump committed today, I still have PTSD, right? I wake up like anxious. Right. And then I open my computer and it's the Biden administration has canceled an arms sale to Saudi Arabia. Like, whoa, what? Good news. So there's a little bit of good news here and there, right? Firing all the people from Voice of America, all those Trump people trying to politicize it, et cetera, right? So there's the executive orders, there's the legislation that's being crafted for COVID relief and other things. There is legislation on DC statehood. So there's a lot of good news, or at least positive developments happening every day. But the thing that really stands out above all else to me, and I'm so incredibly excited about, is that Biden talked about unity, not in terms of trying to get Mitch McConnell to play ball, but in uniting the American people. And Mark, I think we even talked about this for 8 years of Obama, right? That I think his fatal flaw was that desperate desire to win Republican votes in everything he did. And they were not going to give it to him. And he kept trying and trying and trying, because the way that he defined bipartisanship, Democrats defined bipartisanship, and the Beltway media, very important, the Beltway media, was get Republican votes. And that gave all the power to Mitch McConnell and I think Bill Frist back then, right? All those Republican leaders gave him so much power because they can just withhold those votes. And then they could see, he's not bipartisan. And so you have this new administration, and immediately, the talking point from every Republican is, he did X. That's not showing unity, because they're trying to still play that game that unity means doing what Republicans want. And much of the Beltway media and the New York Times and the Washington Post, they're playing that game, right? The Biden spokeswoman was asked at a press conference, like, well, what have you done for Republicans to show unity? And to her credit, and to Biden's credit, he himself redefined it, saying, "This is not. We're not trying to unite Republicans in Congress, right? We're trying to unite America and Republicans." Right. And always, Mark, we've always talked about this. It's just killed me when you look at immigration reform, you got COVID relief, whatever these issues. They are popular with the American people, including significant percentages of Republicans. So they are working for things that are of interest to bipartisan group of Americans. Now, if Republicans in Congress, if they want to obstruct, if they want to be on the margins, on the fringes, if they want to play footsie with their militias and domestic terrorists, all right, that's on them. But that's not who Biden is focused on right now. And Mark, after almost 2 decades of trying to get Democrats to understand this, it seems like they finally did. And that dramatically changes sort of the equation. It takes a lot of power out of Mitch McConnell's hands, because he no longer gets to define what unity is. He no longer gets to define what bipartisan is. Now, he'll keep trying. Of course, he'll keep trying. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of gullible journalists that'll play along. But at least they, as an administration, and the Democratic Party in general, is no longer thinking they're not defining unity anymore by trying to get Mitch McConnell to actually do something in the interest of his country, as opposed to what's in his own personal interest, which is the only thing that motivates McConnell.
Yeah, and it's high time for that. Well, we see that even in terms of the impeachment trial. He's been all over the place on that. Now he voted with Republicans who said that the trial is unconstitutional, after first seemingly agreeing that there should have been a trial. So it's just kind of whichever way the wind blows for McConnell. Rand Paul is a disgrace and ridiculous. I just still don't get, and you and I talked about this the other week, they have the power, if they wanted to vanquish Donald Trump and to get him out of their hair. But they still are acting as if they're scared of him. Why is that? What does he have on them? Or is that just something that they're manufacturing?
They're afraid of primary challenges. It's going to be interesting because Lynn Cheney and Ben Sasse, they have made a bet that Donald Trump isn't going to have that kind of juice in 4 years. That this is his last gasp. I don't think that's a bad bet, but it is a bet. It's not guaranteed, right? I mean, there's two sides to this. Now, those who think that they're going to earn brownie points by aligning with Trump, they're, I think, making the worst bet, because Trump is never going to be loyal to anybody that isn't Ivanka Trump or himself, right? Period.
He doesn't pay, y'all.
No, he doesn't. So they everybody thinks they're going to be different. Apparently, anybody who works with Donald Trump thinks that they're going to be the special one that actually earns Donald Trump's loyalty. They're not. So, but I will caution this: that vote, that Rand Paul vote on the constitutionality of the impeachment process, I wouldn't read everything into it. So what I read into it is that there's 5 Republicans already that are going to vote to convict. You need 12 more. Are we going to get 12? Pretty tough, right? But here's the thing. Those 5 have already they're already on the MAGA shit list, right? They've already spoken out against Trump. They're already getting blasted by the deplorables. If you are not one of those, and you're considering voting to convict, you don't want those a-holes on your ass today. Like, why invite that earlier? And a couple of them, I think Portman was one of them, that said, don't look at don't look at this vote as any sign of how I am going to vote when it comes time for conviction. And so I don't doubt that a bunch of them did that because they just didn't, if they're going to have to deal with the MAGA crowd, they'd rather deal with them later. Why invite that pain and suffering 2 weeks before that final vote? So I still don't think they're going to get 17, but I wouldn't be surprised if more than 5 of those Republicans vote to convict. And I wouldn't be surprised if Mitch McConnell voted to convict, not because he would do the right thing for the country and to hold Donald Trump accountable and all that, but because the corporate PACs, big CEO donors, right now, they're all cutting off the Republican Party. They're freaked out. There's a PR problem with them funding a party that backs insurrectionists and racists. And so he right now, undoubtedly, is trying to figure out if that money is gone for good or if it's just like a temporary thing while people are paying attention and then it'll quietly come back in a couple of months. And that's what he's trying to figure out. If he decides that the money spigot is shut off, if Trump is still around, I wouldn't be surprised that he then votes to convict. And at that point, there's a chance he brings enough of the party over, maybe exactly 17 in order to get rid of Donald Trump. So then they can go back to those donors and say, see, we got rid of him. Don't worry about it. Because right now they have a serious money problem. And Trump is the proximate cause of that money problem. And those MAGA people, they don't have the small dollar foundation that Democrats have now. So it's not like you can depend on those deplorables to fund Republican campaigns and the party committees. the way you're seeing on the left. So it puts him at the mercy of those corporate CEOs and their PR issues.
Would it be wise? Is it wise if the Democrats aren't going to get the other 17 or whatever, or the other 12? Any point in going through with it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for one, you want Republicans to have to cast that vote. You want to put them on record. Are you for insurrection and racism, or are you actually for the rule of law? And to me, I look at Mitt Romney, and we've joked about this before. He was the devil when he was running for president. John McCain was the devil when he was running for president. I would kill for a Republican Party of McCain's and Romney's, not because I agree with them on substantive issues of republicanism versus liberalism, but because they at least believe in democracy at the very basic level. They believe in democracy and not being utter a-holes. So, first of all, you want them on the record. But second of all, if they are going to go all in on Trump, I really do want us to be able to go to those corporate PACs and those corporate CEOs and then put pressure on them to back off from political giving to a party of insurrectionists and racists. So it gives us leverage on the money front to starve the Republican Party if they don't do what they need to do to get rid of their Trump problem. So absolutely, it makes sense, and I think the way they did it actually has worked out. Get the confirmations through. Really focus on that, because if another one of the one of the bit of good news is that Biden has moved really aggressively to staff up the agencies, and it's far beyond anything that Obama or Trump did in the early days. They got full teams out there, thousands and thousands of people already in those agencies within a week, undoing the damage that Trump did. So this allowed Democrats to really focus on getting these department heads in, these cabinet secretaries, before then focusing on this Trump problem. And I got to say, McConnell wanted this delay. I don't think this delay has been very good for Trump or the Republicans, because every day there's more news on how Trump worked to subvert democracy. And so this is actually not, I don't think it benefits Republicans or Trump in any way. It's definitely not lowering the temperature or the desire for justice.
Yeah. It probably in their best interest to cut a plea deal or something and just pass a resolution disqualifying him. I wonder, can the defendant testify at his own impeachment trial?
Yeah.
Because I see him trying to come back, and because nobody's hearing from him now. He doesn't have a platform, so to speak, right now.
Which is kind of nice, right?
But I can see him trying to
refreshing.
Yeah, right. And trying to come and defend himself in a trial. I can see him, possibly trying to do that. But I was just asking your thoughts. I agree. It has to happen. Also for the reason, you want this on the record, Markos. You want this historically on the record. So just like 150 years from now, when people go back and look at this time after the Civil War, they can say, this is what this fool did. Mm-hmm. And this is what the Republican Party did to enable him and support him and defend him. That was an insurrection for nothing. Not even anything that was tangible or meaningful. It was based on an utter fantasy. At least during the Civil War, slavery was real. You were for it or against it. It wasn't a conspiracy theory. All right. It was something that was actually going on. That doesn't justify those who supported slavery and went to war, but they weren't fighting for something that was a conspiracy theory. These guys come out and fight for something that just literally did not exist and completely ignored, as Dr. King said on the steps of Montgomery State Capitol, ignored the real issues. Like, McConnell, their majority leader, wouldn't let anybody get a stimulus. See, if they showed up nonviolently and said, you know what, where's our stimulus? What can anybody have said? But racism will always trump economics in the hearts and minds of the white supremacists. Haven't asked you about Civiqs much since the election. Have you all had a chance to look at anything post-election that stands out?
Yeah, one of my favorite political stats now, and we're not the only ones to see it. I know Morning Consult, other pollsters have also seen it, but it's that Joe Biden right now is more popular with Americans than Donald Trump ever was in 4 years of his presidency. So already Joe Biden, this whole idea that Joe Biden isn't unifying by not doing Republican things. Actually, he is more unifying as a president than Donald Trump ever was. And I think if he starts delivering, if people get another $1,400 check and other sort of Democratic priorities, I think you're going to see that number continue, if not continue to be up. We still have a very stratified country. And I suspect you're going to see a lot of Republicans happily cash that $1,400 check and still disapprove of Joe Biden and the Democrats. But at least he'll be delivering for all Americans. And we're back to an administration that actually is representing the entire country, even the deplorables, even them,
right? Even
those people, unlike what we had before where Donald Trump was systematically, consciously trying to screw over New Jersey, New York, California. So it's a different breed. And I think people are responding to that. He's actually net positive right now. I think in Civiqs, he's 48%. Job approvals are favorable and 44 are negative. And now, if you look at Democrats and Republicans, it's it's polar opposites, right? 3% of Republicans approve of Joe Biden, just like 2% of Democrats approved of Donald Trump. So it's not them. It's and the Democrats obviously support Joe Biden, just like Republicans support Donald Trump. It's the independents. It's people who aren't as tied down to either party. They are, and Mark, we've talked about independence, and I don't believe a true independent actually exists, but that's where you see sort of swinginess. People who are willing to say, like, yeah, I'm always going to vote for maybe the Republican, but okay, I'm okay with Biden. He's not terrible. I'm okay with him, and vice versa, right? I think people who may always vote liberal may decide that, okay, Donald Trump, I like his racism. Maybe they're a Southern white, Democrat, and so they're okay with racism. So they might have been okay with Donald Trump. So you're seeing that because independents really did not like Donald Trump in the end. They really did not like Donald Trump in the end, which is why his approval ratings were so bad. And right now they actually are giving Joe Biden a net positive approval rating, which means that they're more positive to him than negative. And I'm hoping it stays that way.
Yeah.
I think it's the big pieces we have to deliver. And you're hearing Democrats talk like that. Like they can't be timid like they were with Barack Obama in 2009. It was a different Senate, remember, right? That you still had Joe Lieberman and Max Baucus and Ben Nelson. So you had these horrible Democrats that would probably be Republicans today. But still, Obama, again, he spent so much time trying to win Republican votes, right? That Affordable Care Act negotiations lasted like 16 months. And never in those negotiations that Republicans ever indicate that they were actually going to vote for that thing. They didn't even pretend.
Yeah.
They didn't even say they didn't even string Obama along, right? They from the beginning are like, nope. And Obama kept negotiating against himself. Remember that? Like, well, how about this? Well, how about that?
Right.
Well, I'll give you this. And nope. You're not seeing that from Biden. You're not seeing that from the narrow 50-50 Republican or Democratic Senate. And in fact, there are positive signs that there may be real change. I mean, there is a not impossible chance that we may get DC statehood.
Yeah.
This is a big one. I mean, even what's his face? Joe Manchin, West Virginia conservative Democratic senator, he didn't even rule it out. Like,
I know.
He hasn't ruled it out.
Right.
He didn't say he would do it, right? But he didn't rule it out. Yeah. And there is a very, very solid argument to be made that you cannot filibuster a statehood vote. A constitutional argument. The mechanism for statehood is in a different part of the Constitution than we're elected. So if this is a straight up majority vote, that's a way for Democrats to break this logjam, right? This 50-50 mess that we're in.
Yeah.
Let's get these senators.
Once and for all.
Yeah. And fix a aberration of democracy. This shouldn't be what it is. And so fix that. And make the Senate a little bit more equitable. Still heavily biased towards Republicans, but make it a little bit more equitable.
Well, hopefully that'll happen. That'll make my life worthwhile. As you know, no one has spent more time in jail for DC statehood than yours truly. So we will look forward to that. Hopefully that will happen. But so I'm curious, Markos, the fact that they want to resist impeachment, and now some of them even changing their stories. Even the ones who decried January 6th are now trying to clean that up, say Trump wasn't responsible. So you would have thought some of them would have had some of their own ambition. Have some of these senators just resigned themselves to him being their nominee again, or are they trying to kiss up to make sure he doesn't form this third party?
Probably all of the above. I mean, those are all good reasons to kiss his ring, right?
Yeah.
I think we talked about this a week or two ago. I don't think there's a third party coming. Like, I don't think Trump has the energy to do it. He definitely doesn't have the money to do it. He doesn't have competent people around him to do it. What's he going to have? He's going to have who around him? Steve Bannon? I mean, who's going to build? Who's going to make this party that's a competent person? Jared Kushner? I mean, what else is he screwed up enough? I mean, I guess he could waste some more money. I just don't see him having. And in the end, the party would be about Donald Trump and nothing but Donald Trump, and that's not what a political party is. Like, that's what a cult is. And so it's hard for me to see how that would happen. Now, the threat, I know that has the Republicans freaked out for sure. And so that's why you have people like Lindsey Graham totally kissing up to Donald Trump. And, we can't have a future Republican Party without Donald Trump. Donald Trump just lost re-election, something incumbent presidents almost never do. He cost him the Senate. He cost him the House. He cost him countless state legislatures. Donald Trump has been terrible for the Republican Party. And it has made them more beholden to a smaller demographic group, right? Old, white, Southern, rural people.
Right.
So while he's cost them white support in the suburbs, I mean, not men, but women, cost them women support in the suburbs, which is critical in places like Georgia and Arizona, and soon to come online, Texas. Texas is going to flip at some point here in the next couple cycles. And Mark, I'm already looking beyond that, right? I have a new obsession. Remember 10 years ago, my obsession was Georgia. Remember that?
Yeah, that's right. Sure was.
Georgia, right?
All the time. Right.
My new obsession is Mississippi.
Yeah.
Mississippi can flip in the next 12 years.
Yeah.
Nobody believes it. But by 2030, about 46 to 48% of Mississippi will be non-white.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the problem with Mississippi politically has been, 90% of white people vote Republican.
Right.
90% of white people in Mississippi vote Republican.
Mm-hmm.
2, black people don't vote.
Yeah.
In Mississippi, they're suppressed. They don't have a reason to, because they're gerrymandered in a way to dilute their vote. The whole story of the South, right? It's right there. Mississippi is the living historical example of Jim Crow racism in action.
Yeah.
So you have a black community that hasn't been empowered to vote, and thus hasn't had a reason to vote. And 3, Mississippi lacks a lot of the sort of the urban educated centers like Atlanta, like Houston, like Dallas, that are driving a lot of democratic growth. So those are things that make it a little tough. But Donald Trump only won by 200,000 votes.
That's right.
So it's by percentage, it's about 15%. It's only 200,000 votes. There are more than 200,000 black voters in Mississippi that don't vote. It's the same story that we saw in Atlanta, Georgia, where black voters didn't think there was a reason. And it's amazing, Mark. I have so many favorite stats, but we know that Joe Biden only won Georgia by 11,000 votes, right? Only won by 11,000 votes.
Right.
Reverend Warnock won it by 80,000 votes in a runoff. Once people realized that their vote counts, that they can have a difference, and somebody is working to make sure that they're registered and that they turn out and vote, and that they're told that their vote matters and they care about it. Holy crap! Everything changes.
Makes all the difference in the world. Yeah.
And so we saw it in the black vote in Georgia. And if you look, there's these maps that show, it's like color coded maps, right? And they'll show the difference in vote between the general election in Georgia and the runoff election in January. And if you look at the changes, Atlanta looks pretty good. Turnout was up. But where the turnout was just absolutely out of this world? Between the two was Southwest Georgia. That's the rural black belt, rural black vote, which even rural blacks, people don't even know that exists, right? People think black vote, that's in the cities. Let's go to Atlanta. Let's make sure we target the black community in Atlanta, right? That was the idea of targeting the black vote. Georgia has a massive rural black vote that had never been communicated with. And so Stacey Abrams' group, the New Georgia Project, and other groups really focus on that rural vote. And so they turned out in good numbers. But in January, with Warnock on the ballot and the idea that, holy crap, we actually can win a state like Georgia, turnout in that area was just gangbusters. And that was the big difference. The other big difference was that turnout in the Trumpiest districts was down. So this idea that if Trump's not on the ballot, these people won't turn out and vote. There's some good evidence now that may be the case. But I'm more excited about that black vote just turning out in mass.
Right.
And so I see that. And then I look over at Mississippi. And unfortunately, we don't have enough white allies in Mississippi right now. But the way that demographics are moving in that state, I mean, we'll be there in about 10 years. So I'm really, really eager right now to focus on the group, like Stacey Abrams' group, New Georgia Project in Georgia. Who's doing that work in Mississippi? Who's doing that work in South Carolina? That's another one. Who's doing that work in North Carolina? North Carolina shouldn't be lean red. It should be lean blue. Yeah. We know who's doing that work in Texas Organizing Project. We know a lot of people who did the work in Arizona. So now I'm really excited about who's doing that work in Mississippi, who's doing it in South Carolina, North Carolina, and a little tougher, but Alabama shouldn't be discounted either.
Yeah. We can do it. We can do it if we focus. To me, that's the only drawback to Jamie becoming chair of the party. While he deserves it, I don't know that Jamie should not have just stayed in South Carolina the way Stacey stayed in Georgia to help us permanently flip that in that way. You need somebody there. And see, Jamie is Stacey reincarnated. JC is to South Carolina what Stacey was to Georgia. Yeah. And that personality. So that's my only regret.
Yeah, that ray of hope. That ray of hope. Yeah, right. I don't know who else there does that. That national profile to raise money.
Yeah, all of that. And maybe he could do both. I mean, because really, what does a DNC chair do? I mean, to me, if I'm the DNC chair, one of my priorities is let's get South Carolina.
Maybe he can do the whole black belt, right? And because that's, I mean, we need it not just. I mean, we don't need Mississippi and South Carolina for the Electoral College for president. I mean, right. If we can nail down Texas, like that's game over for Republicans at the national level for a long time.
Yeah,
we just really and we're working on that. We need Mississippi. One, we need it morally, right? I mean, there's a whole black community there in Alabama and Arkansas that are completely and utterly neglected and subjugated.
Yeah.
Period. Right. So there's a moral argument. But if you don't want to do moral arguments because they're too messy and complicated, here's the stark political reality is that the Senate is undemocratic. And if we can turn Georgia from 2 Republican senators to Democratic senators, and we could turn Arizona from 2 Republican senators to 2 Democratic senators, Why don't we do that in Mississippi and Texas and South Carolina and maybe Alabama, Louisiana? Oh,
Yeah.
I can't believe I forgot Louisiana.
Louisiana, yeah. Another one.
These are states, they're tough. And I don't want anybody to think like, oh, Markos thinks we can win Mississippi. I'm not saying we can win Mississippi today. I'm saying we do with Mississippi what Stacey was doing in Georgia 10 years ago.
Yeah. Look, Mike Espy almost won Mississippi 4 years ago. He forced a runoff with Confederate sending. Now, didn't do as well this time for a lot of reasons, but even when he was on the show, what he was saying is that 90% Republican white vote in Mississippi was beginning to change because there were so many white students at the universities throughout Mississippi, young people who were coming in and flipping over. And they were the ones that got that Confederate flag taken down like that. Folks been trying to do that for decades, and that's what he was counting. So it's doable. It's right for that. We just have to take advantage of it. And you got Chokwe Lumumba down in Jackson. He's ready. So we can, there are Stacey-like individuals, Jamie-like individuals in Mississippi. And I'm sure there are in Louisiana, Alabama too. We just need to get behind them and empower them and get this done. And you're right. I think people see the empowerment that happened in Georgia. It's never happened before. And so people see that now, and hopefully something can come.
And to realize that Georgia didn't happen overnight. Stacey Abrams didn't show up 2 years ago, ran for governor, and boom, the state's. This is work that's been being done over the course of a decade.
Yes, process. Yep.
Yeah.
You're right. That's Thursday Coast, folks. Markos Moulitsas. Check out his podcast weekly. It drops on Thursdays. The live show
Wednesdays. No. Live show on Tuesday.
I'm sorry.
The show on Wednesday. And if you check out this week's podcast, we actually had Nsé Utam of the New Georgia Project. She was so fantastic. I can barely stand it. That we loved her so much that we actually had her the whole show to talk about not just the work she did in Georgia to help Georgia flip it, but also even again Mississippi, because Mark, it's my new obsession. I'm a little obsessed with Mississippi.
That's right.
I want to flip it.
Yeah, let's flip it for sure. Markos Moulitsas, Civiqs with a Q as well, DailyKos.com. Thank you, buddy, as always.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. Please remember to listen, like, subscribe, and wherever you get your podcasts, please give the show a 5-star rating. And please do spread the word. Let's all continue to pray for each other during this pandemic and this police-demic. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.